everyone, it's Clarice and today I'm going to update you on the status of my reading goals. Since we're over halfway through the year already, I thought it would be a good time for me to revisit the reading goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the year to see which goals I'm doing well at, which goals I am lagging behind in, and generally what types of books I should probably be reading for the rest of the year. Just a few notes before I begin. One, all numbers and statistics I will be mentioning in this video pertain to the books that I read from January to June in this year. I will not include anything that I read in July. Two, while I read some comics in graphic novel format or trade paperback format, there are some that I read monthly, and I do not count single issues towards my numbers in Goodreads, and neither will I do so in this video. And three, in January, I spent most of the month reading Marvel Civil War, and this included like 98 issues, but I only counted the entire Marvel Civil War as one book. Now that those notes are out of the way, on to actual numbers and statistics. First of all, from January to June this year, I did manage to read a total of 40 books, and coincidentally, I do not do this on purpose. Exactly half of those books are comics and the other half are novels or novellas or that sort of thing. That's not related to any of my reading goals, just thought I'd mention it because I found it amusing. Out of the 40 books I read, exactly 3/4 or 30 of those books was related to or fulfilled at least one of the reading goals I set for myself at the start of the year, and I'm relatively happy with this because I want, for the most part, to read books that are related to my reading goals. Now on to more specific goals. The first one I mentioned in my video was to read more local literature or books that were published in the Philippines. And so far this year I was able to read a total of 6 of those books, including a bunch of comics and a couple of novels. So far I'm really happy with my progress here. This is actually one of my more minor reading goals for this year, and for me to be able to read an average of 1 book a month, I'm pretty happy with that, and I hope to continue that throughout the rest of the year. There are a few more local books that I have in mind. I do want to read some comics by Arnold Are, and I also want to read Ilustrado. So hopefully I can get to those before the end of the year. My next goal is to read more nonfiction, and I think I'm doing really well in this, and I think I've technically already succeeded since I've read 7 this year so far, and last year I was only able to read 5. So technically I've already read more this year than I did last year, so yay for me. And I think I've read a pretty good mix of nonfiction. 4 out of those 7 were comics. Some of them were memoirs and autobiographies, but a couple of them also weren't. You know, books like Quiet, which I loved, and I'm not totally sure what you would classify the thrilling adventures of Lovelace and Babbage as. So yes, I'm very happy with both the number of nonfiction books I read as well as the variety of nonfiction books I read. In terms of nonfiction books that I still hope to read, for the graphic memoirs, I do want to read Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, and fortunately that's in my library so I can probably borrow it. And I also really want to read In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park because I've heard wonderful things about it. Again, I'm already very happy with how I am in terms of the non-fiction that I'm reading. My next goal is to borrow some books because the university I'm in has a wonderful library, and I never borrowed any books from there before this year, so I really needed to remedy that. And so far this year, I have read 7 books that I borrowed from the library, which I'm also very happy about. And while I've read 7, I'm actually also currently borrowing 2. There were a couple books from the library I loved so much that I want to buy a physical copy of it, but I haven't gotten around to that yet, except for one book, Elmer. Again, it's one of those books from the Philippines that I mentioned, but it's also a new favorite. The next goal is one of my major goals, and that is to reread more books. And unfortunately, this is a goal that I'm failing at so far, but I'm not gonna feel too bad about it because it's just not one that I've been focusing on yet. But so far this year, I've reread 3 books. I'm gonna mention all of them because there are only 3 of them. The first of them is The Fellowship of the Ring. I still haven't continued reading that series, unfortunately. And the next 2 were the first 2 volumes of Scott Pilgrim. I haven't reread much, but I noticed with all the books that I reread, I actually enjoyed them more the second time reading them. In terms of books that I hope to reread soon, one of them is definitely The Book Thief because it's one of my favorite books, and yet I only read it once. And another book that I've been talking about rereading for ages, and that is Wicked. I read it at the wrong time with the wrong mindset. Hopefully if I reread it, I'm gonna enjoy it more. So yes, that is a goal that needs to be addressed sometime soon. The next goal is another one that I've kind of neglected, and that is to read more of the influential sci-fi and fantasy. My basis for this is to read books from NPR's Top 100 Science Fiction and Fantasy list. because I need some sort of basis. And so far I've only read 4 of the books from that list this year, including of course The Fellowship of the Ring, the second half of the Sandman series, and that's 2 books for me, because it's Absolute Sandman number 3 and 4, as well as Old Man's War by John Scalzi. So yes, I have been neglecting this goal. I will address it sometime soon. At the top of my list to probably read from this are Wicked, again by Gregory Maguire, which I mentioned previously, as well as Neuromancer, and also Neil Stephenson books, because I haven't read any Neil Stephenson and I really want to. I own Anathem, so hopefully maybe I can read that one. So yes, again, a goal that I have to address soon. And next major reading goal is probably the reason why I neglected those other 2 so much, and that is the goal to read the world or read books from different countries. This is probably the one I'm most proud of, and the reason why I didn't reread many books, and the reason why I haven't read many of the top sci-fi and fantasy books, so they kind of contradict with my read the world goal. Not many of the books that I read before are not from America or maybe the UK. That's actually why I'm trying to read more of them, but if I'm trying to reread books that I previously read, I'm not going to be reading the world, you know? And also a lot of the books that are top sci-fi and fantasy books are coming from America or the UK again. And so since these 2 goals contradict so much with the read the world goal, and since the read the world goal is the one that I focused on the most, I think, in these last 6 months, I've kind of neglected those. From January to June, I read from a total of 14 countries from those 40 books that I read. Before I get to the pie charts, just a few notes. A few things to take note of. For all of these, I based the country on the author's nationality, not on the author's race. Also, for non-fiction books, if those books were a biography or a memoir, or basically a book that's surrounding the life of a single person, I will look at the nationality of the subject of the book and not of the author of the book. For example, Sidney Padwa, who wrote The Thrilling Adventures of Lovelace and Babbage, is Canadian, but Lovelace and Babbage themselves were from Britain, so I counted the country of this book to be Great Britain. So with those out of the way, onto the pie charts. I'm going to show you 2. The first is breaking this down by author. And out of the 29 authors I read from this year, 5 were from Great Britain, 5 were from the US, and 5 were from the Philippines, each comprising of 17.24% of this entire pie. 2 authors each from Japan, Canada, and Spain, each comprising of 6.9%. And the remainder of this pie will show you that I read 1 author from each of the countries of Belgium, Nigeria, Russia, Colombia, Sweden, Ireland, Iran, and the Dominican Republic. So each of those would comprise of 3.45%. I'm very happy with the breakdown of this because I feel like last year I may have read like 90% American authors. That's not an actual statistic, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to the reality. And I'm hoping to keep it this colorful and well distributed. Now the next pie chart I'm going to show you is the distribution based on books/series. If I read multiple books from that series, I will just count it as 1. And so I read a total of 33 books/series. And so the breakdown is a little bit less well distributed, but it's still pretty good. It gives us 7 books/series from the US comprising of 21.21%, 6 from Great Britain comprising of 18.18%, 5 from the Philippines, 15.15%, 3 from Canada, 9.09%, 2 each from Japan and Spain, taking up 6.06%, and then 1 each from Belgium, Nigeria, Russia, Colombia, Sweden, Ireland, Iran, and Dominican Republic, taking up 3.03%. I was hoping none of them would reach 1/4, and none of them did, which I'm very happy about. In terms of other books from other countries that I'm hoping to read this year, there are actually a couple of books I bought recently that are from other countries, including How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia, which is by a Pakistani author, I'm pretty sure, as well as the Man Booker Prize winning A Brief History of 7 Killings, which is by a Jamaican author. So yes, that's the goal I'm actually the most happy with because I've read so much from so many different countries and I'm so happy with how I'm doing so far, and I'm really looking forward to reading more. And the last goal, which I mentioned in that video, is again the most important one, which is to have fun, and I've definitely been having fun reading. There are weeks when I'm just like, I want to read all the things, but there are also weeks and times like right now when I just do not feel like reading at all, and I'm not forcing myself to. And there were definitely times last year when I feel like I did force myself to read faster than I actually wanted to, or to read books and I didn't feel like reading, and that took away from the experience. While I'm very happy that I'm doing relatively well in most of the reading goals that I set, I'm the most happy that I'm actually able to enjoy almost every single book that I read. So yes, that is my progress so far this year with my reading goals, and I'm very happy with it. How are you doing with your reading goals? Are you having fun reading so far this year? Please talk to me about it in the comment section down below. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!